They tell me I ruined a celebration. I tell myself I finally stopped pretending. This story is an original creation by the writing team of the Family Afterlight channel, inspired by the hidden corners of family life, and told with the purpose of fostering emotional connection and spreading understanding. The venue sat quiet by the river, the kind of place that mistakes restraint for warmth. My mother loved spaces like this. Order, distance, applause that never got too loud. My father drifted beside her, smiling when prompted, lifting a glass when the room expected it. They moved like people who had rehearsed the same scene for decades and never questioned the script. Vanessa arrived first. Of course she did. Doors opened. Laughter followed. Someone pressed champagne into her hand before she even found her seat. Compliments stacked quickly about her dress, her children, the life she had built so effortlessly. My father's face brightened in a way I had learned not to wait for. My mother adjusted Vanessa's sleeve with the tenderness she saved for public proof. I came in last, holding my son's coat. Caleb kept close, tall for 15, quiet in the way observant kids become. No one rushed us. No one asked how school was going or whether traffic had been bad. A nod from my father passed for greeting. My mother's smile stayed polite, practiced. Already turning back to the center of the room, Caleb leaned toward me, voice low, careful. He had learned that tone early. Where should we sit? Anywhere, drifted out of me, light enough to keep the peace. We took 2 chairs near the end of the table. Vanessa's children were already surrounded, their stories repeated and amplified. My mother laughed louder than usual. My father clinked his glass once, testing the room, enjoying the attention before the attention officially belonged to him. A server passed. My plate filled. No one noticed. That part was familiar. Caleb watched everything without staring. He counted pauses. He tracked who spoke and who waited. When my mother praised Vanessa's family for always showing up, my son's shoulders tightened. When my father praised legacy and commitment, Caleb's eyes drifted to the window, then back to the table. My phone buzzed. A message from a cousin across the table. All cheer and emojis. Glad you could make it. I tapped a polite response and slipped the phone away. If this story resonates with you, if you recognize the choreography, stay with me. Sometimes the smallest moments tell the truth first. Vanessa raised her glass, smiling toward my parents. My mother beamed back, already composing the next photograph in her mind. My father cleared his throat, savoring the quiet that followed. He loved this part. The room leaned in. Caleb's knee brushed mine. His whisper came measured, almost rehearsed. I think they forget we're here. The words landed softly and split something open. I rested my hand over his, steady on the surface, bracing underneath. Around us, forks clinked, laughter rose and fell on cue. The room did what it always did, and for the first time, I understood that silence wasn't neutral. It chose a side. The night moved forward without us. Plates changed, glasses refilled. Vanessa's children were praised for being polite, for being bright, for being exactly what the room expected. Caleb folded his napkin into neat lines and waited. He had learned that waiting was safer than reaching. When my husband died 6.5 years ago, the house didn't fall apart all at once. It thinned. Voices softened around me, then disappeared. My parents offered their basement for 11 weeks. Not months, weeks. My mother framed it as generosity. My father framed it as time to reset. The door at the bottom of the stairs closed easily. Too easily. Have you started looking floated down one afternoon, casual as weather? I'm managing, drifted back up, because managing sounded less needy than surviving. The question never returned. Neither did help with deposits or paperwork or references. When I mentioned a rental application, my mother's mouth tightened. You'll figure it out. You always do. The sentence landed like a compliment and behaved like a boundary. Vanessa visited once during that time. She brought coffee and optimism. Mom says you're strong. Her voice offered, hopeful. You don't like being fussed over? I smiled then, practiced. That's one way to put it. At the table tonight, strength had the same translation. Quiet, self-contained, out of the way. My father leaned toward Vanessa, praising her for keeping everything together while raising children and managing a household. The words floated past me as if they weren't meant to land. Caleb shifted. They talk like surviving is a hobby. I squeezed his hand under the table. Eat, breathed out, careful not to draw attention. He nodded and took a bite, jaw set. He had learned that advice early too, how to swallow things quickly. When my parents spoke about family, they meant effort that showed, performances that photographed well. I paid attention to the parts that never made it into speeches. The winter the heating company sent a final notice and I covered it quietly, enough to keep the lights on, not enough to invite thanks. The insurance lapse I fixed with a call and a payment and no follow-up. The groceries that appeared anonymously because asking would have complicated the story they told about independence. At the table, Vanessa's husband raised a glass toward my parents. You've done everything right. Applause followed, soft and approving. Caleb leaned closer again, voice barely there. I try not to need things. The sentence cut deeper than any accusation. I felt it settle between my ribs, heavy and exact. You don't have to earn space, whispered back, careful to keep my eyes on my plate. Across the table, my mother laughed at something Vanessa's child did. The sound was bright and public. My father nodded along. Satisfied. No one looked down our end. If this feels familiar, stay with me. Some families don't raise their voices. They raise expectations and call it love. The plates cleared. My father straightened in his chair, fingers finding the stem of his glass. The room leaned in again. Caleb's hand tightened around mine. A small anchor. The past had brought us here. The next moment would decide what stayed quiet and what refused to. My father rose slowly, the way men do when they expect the room to wait. Conversations thinned out around him. Chairs shifted. Glasses were lifted before he asked. He enjoyed this pause, the moment where attention gathered without effort. My parents taught me that commitment is a choice you renew every day. His voice carried easily, practiced from years of speaking at the right moments. 40 years isn't luck. It's discipline. My mother angled her body toward him, lips curved in approval. Vanessa's husband nodded, already smiling. Vanessa reached for her children, pulling them closer like living proof. My father continued, words warming as the room leaned in. We're proud of the family we built. Watching our daughter grow into the woman she is today has been the greatest joy of our lives. Vanessa flushed, modest in a way that had always been rewarded. Applause followed, polite and immediate. My mother lifted her glass higher. You did everything right. Her tone rang, meant for the room, but anchored to Vanessa. You built a beautiful life. The room agreed. Compliments stacked quickly about parenting, about balance, about legacy. My father gestured toward Vanessa's children. This, he announced, is what it's all for. The future we always imagined. Caleb's shoulders stiffened. I felt it before I saw it. His fork hovered, then settled back onto the plate. My mother added softly, perfect, as if naming them sealed the truth. Caleb leaned toward me, breath careful, eyes fixed on the tablecloth. Am I part of that future? The words were quiet. They didn't ask for permission. They landed. I felt something cold and clarifying move through me, like recognition finally taking shape. Around us, the room glowed with approval. No one noticed the end of the table. Vanessa's youngest laughed at something whispered by a cousin. My father smiled wider, encouraged by the reaction. Family, he continued, savoring the word, showing up, doing your part. My mother glanced in our direction then, briefly. The way people check mirrors without seeing themselves. Her gaze slid past us. Caleb didn't look up. His voice came again, softer this time. I try to stay out of the way, my hand closed over his. You don't need to, pressed out, steady on the surface, shaking underneath. The speech wound down, glasses clinked. Someone near the center of the table called out congratulations. Applause returned, fuller now. My father sat, satisfied. Vanessa turned toward us, smile still in place. You okay? Floated over, well-meaning and late. Caleb nodded automatically. I held his hand a second longer before letting go. Across the table, my mother leaned toward Vanessa's husband, praising his support, his steadiness, his role. My father reached for his drink again, relaxed, conversation blooming back to life. A cousin raised a phone for pictures. Everyone closer, a voice suggested. Chairs scraped. Bodies shifted inward. The circle tightened without us. Caleb slid his chair back an inch. Uncertain. I felt the familiar instinct rise, the urge to smooth, to adjust, to disappear quietly so nothing would feel uncomfortable. The glass in my hand felt heavier than it should have. I tapped it once, lightly, not enough to startle, just enough to be heard. The sound cut through the chatter and landed where my son's words still echoed. Heads turned. My mother's smile returned, expectant and thin, already shaping what she hoped would come next. I stood, feeling the room recalibrate around a different kind of attention. My mother's smile held steady, the kind that signaled a safe joke was expected. Her eyes flicked once toward Vanessa, as if checking whether the spotlight still belonged where she preferred. Before we move on, my voice carried, calm enough to make people lean in. I'd like to raise a glass to the worst parents in the room. A few nervous chuckles broke out immediately. Too quick, too eager. Someone near the middle of the table let out a sharp little laugh that sounded more like permission than amusement. My mother's expression tightened without fully changing. Monica? Not tonight. My father's brows lifted, confused first, then cautious. His hand stayed wrapped around his champagne like it might anchor him. The room waited for the punchline. It didn't arrive. My husband died 6.5 years ago, floated out, quiet and clean. Caleb and I kept breathing anyway, alone. My mother's chin tilted, defensive posture sliding into place. We helped you. 11 weeks in the basement. The words landed with the weight of fact, not accusation. That's what you've practiced remembering. A fork clinked against a plate. Someone shifted uncomfortably. A cousin stared at their napkin like it required urgent attention. My father's mouth opened, then closed. His gaze slid to Caleb and back again, as if searching for the version of this moment he could survive. My mother's voice sharpened. You're being dramatic. A slow inhale steadied my lungs. Dramatic would have been crying. Dramatic would have been screaming. This is just the truth you all keep stepping around. Vanessa's smile had faded completely. Her eyes stayed on me, unblinking, as if the room had changed shape and she needed to understand what it was becoming. My father tried for warmth. Sweetheart, we're celebrating. Exactly. Came back softly. Celebrating what? The legacy, the future, the family you always imagined. A few heads turned toward Vanessa's children. They had gone very still, sensing danger without knowing its name. Caleb sat rigid beside me, eyes down, fingers pressed together so tightly his knuckles had gone pale. My mother leaned forward, voice coated in sweetness that never reached her eyes. You should sit down before you embarrass yourself. A laugh fluttered again, smaller this time. Weaker. It died quickly. My son leaned over a minute ago, my voice lowered, forcing people to choose whether to keep listening. He asked if he was part of the future you were toasting. My mother's mouth parted, then snapped shut. My father's face drained of color, his gaze locking on Caleb as if seeing him for the first time that evening. Caleb's voice barely surfaced. I didn't mean my palm covered his hand. You didn't do anything wrong. An ant near the center exhaled through her nose. Impatient. Monica, honey, families aren't perfect, a cousin murmured. Not here. Barely audible. Another relative, a man I'd spoken to twice in my life, offered a bright, fixed smile. Come on, let's not ruin the mood. The room shifted into management mode. That was always the reflex: contain the discomfort, protect the image, sacrifice the person who disrupted the script. My mother seized that momentum. After everything we've done, this is how you repay us. My father's voice followed, lower, pleading. We didn't know how to help you. You shut us out. A tight laugh escaped me, not amused, more like disbelief. You didn't know how to help, so you stopped asking if we were alive. My mother's tone turned icy. We are not doing this in public. It's only public because you made it public. The words cut cleanly. You toasted the family you love in front of everyone. Caleb and I were sitting right here while you erased us. Vanessa shifted in her chair, shoulders tense, as if she wanted to move but didn't know where. Her husband reached for her glass, then thought better of it. My mother's cheeks flushed. You are unstable. A hush fell so suddenly it felt physical. My father flinched, eyes darting around the table, terrified of what people might think, more terrified of what they already did. I held my mother's gaze. That's your favorite word when you don't want to face what you've done. Her lips pressed into a line. Leave. Not a request. A verdict. I turned to Caleb. Coat. He moved instantly. Relief and shame tangled in his face. He stood too, voice small but steady. I'm ready. My father half rose from his seat, hands lifted as if he could stop the scene without changing anything. Monica, please. My mother cut him off with a glance that could silence a room. Her voice followed. Brittle. Go. We walked away from the table without another word. Behind us. Someone tried to restart conversation too fast, too loud. A chair scraped. A glass clinked. A forced laugh snapped like a rubber band. Caleb stayed close at my side, shoulders tight, steps quick. Outside. The air felt sharper, cleaner. My son's breath shuddered once, then steadied. I didn't want to make it worse. His voice offered, raw with apology. My hand found his shoulder, firm. You didn't make anything worse. You named what was already there. We made it home without commentary. Caleb went straight to his room, shoes still on. Door half closed like he hadn't decided whether he was allowed privacy yet. I sat on the couch and waited for my phone to ring. It didn't. Morning arrived heavy and ordinary. Dishes from the night before. A cold cup of tea untouched on the table. The quiet felt deliberate, not peaceful. No message asking if we were safe. No call checking on Caleb. The silence had a shape, and it pointed away from us. By mid-morning, the phone woke up. An aunt's text appeared first. That wasn't appropriate. There's a time and place. No greeting, no concern. A voicemail followed from an uncle whose voice always carried authority without intimacy. Family isn't perfect. Parents do their best. Forgiveness matters. The words stacked neatly, practiced and empty. Another message arrived, forwarded from someone else's account. Your mother is devastated. The sentence carried weight, not because it was true, but because it was meant to redirect blame. Not one message mentioned Caleb. Not one asked what it felt like to sit at a table where your grandfather erased you with a smile. Caleb padded into the kitchen, eyes cautious. Did anyone call? Not yet. Drifted out, measured. He nodded once, absorbing the answer without protest. He poured cereal carefully, the way children do when they don't want to create more trouble. Around noon, another voicemail lit the screen. My father's voice sounded strained, controlled. You dragged your son into adult problems. You punished your sister for having a better life. The sentence landed like a verdict already agreed upon. I didn't respond. More messages arrived through the afternoon. Variations on the same theme. Tone softened in places, sharpened in others, but the meaning stayed fixed. I had embarrassed them. I had overreacted. I needed to apologize so things could return to normal. Normal had a very specific definition. Caleb watched me scroll, then looked away. I don't want them mad at you. A slow breath settled in my chest. They're not mad because of you. Then why? They're uncomfortable. Came back quietly. And they're used to me fixing that for them. He considered this. Spoon paused mid-air. Are you going to? The question held more than curiosity. It held habit, expectation, fear. I locked the phone and set it face down. Not this time. Caleb nodded, shoulders easing just enough to notice. He finished his cereal and rinsed the bowl without being asked. The silence stretched again, but it had shifted. It no longer asked me to disappear. It waited to see whether I would. Vanessa arrived 3 days later, unannounced, standing in the doorway with the same careful smile she used when she didn't know which version of me she'd be meeting. Her coat stayed on. Her purse stayed on her shoulder. She looked like someone prepared to leave quickly. I couldn't stop thinking about your son. Her voice offered, quiet and unsettled. About his face. Caleb hovered at the end of the hall, pretending to look for something that didn't exist. Vanessa noticed him immediately and softened. Hey, she added gently. I'm glad you're home from school. He nodded once and disappeared into his room. Vanessa moved into the kitchen without being invited, fingers tracing the edge of the counter as if checking for damage. They're acting like nothing happened, she continued, joking about how dramatic the night got. Like it was weather. That sounds familiar. Her shoulders tightened. I didn't defend them. You didn't defend me either. The truth landed between us, not sharp, just present. She exhaled slowly. I didn't know how. I poured coffee and pushed a mug toward her. You've never had to. Her gaze dropped to the cup. They always said you didn't want help. A small smile surfaced, thin and tired. I learned not to ask when it didn't change anything. She absorbed that quietly. After a moment, her voice returned, cautious. They mentioned money. My hand stilled on the counter. They always do. Not like that, she clarified. They said you'd been generous, that you liked feeling needed. A breath steadied my chest. I paid a heating bill once when the notice came in red. Covered an insurance lapse so the policy wouldn't cancel. Groceries. When the fridge was empty and pride was loud. I didn't like feeling needed. I liked keeping the lights on. Vanessa's mouth pressed into a line. They never told me that. They weren't supposed to. Drifted out. It ruined the story. She left soon after, still conflicted, still unsure where to stand. The house returned to its quieter rhythm. 2 weeks passed before she came back. This time, she brought a folder. She placed it on the table and didn't touch it again. They asked me to bring this. As a peace offering, I opened it alone. The pages were crisp, legal, final. The house, the savings, the car, everything routed cleanly to Vanessa. My name appeared once, tucked into a paragraph about personal items, vague and dismissible. Caleb's presence lived in a single line, any educational support to be considered at the discretion of the executor. Vanessa watched my face carefully. They said you wouldn't want responsibility, that you're unstable. A laugh escaped me, short and surprised. They always choose words that excuse themselves. She nodded, jaw set. I told them no. The word echoed louder than anything else in the room. They don't get to use me like that, she continued. Not anymore. Her hand trembled slightly as it rested on the table. I'm changing my own will, splitting things evenly, removing them from any control. Relief didn't rush in. Something steadier took its place. "They asked me to give you a note," she added, sliding a folded paper forward. I tore it in half without opening it and dropped it into the trash. Vanessa watched, then nodded once. "Good." Caleb's door creaked open. He lingered in the hallway, eyes flicking between us. Vanessa turned toward him fully. "I'm sorry I didn't see it sooner." Her voice carried, unguarded now. "You matter." He studied her for a long moment, then offered a small nod. Not forgiveness, not rejection, just acknowledgement. When she left, the folder stayed on the table a while longer. I closed it eventually, not with anger, but with understanding. Love, in my family, had always been conditional. Now it was documented. The email arrived first. Long, careful, filled with words that circled instead of landing. My mother wrote about misunderstandings and intentions, about family values and how easily things get twisted when emotions run high. She mentioned the basement again, framed as generosity, as if 11 weeks could erase years of absence. The message ended with a line that had always worked before "You're still our daughter." I closed it without replying. An hour later, the phone buzzed. My father's name filled the screen. I let it ring twice before answering. His voice sounded practiced, low and reasonable. He talked about a bill he didn't understand, something about a notice and a deadline. He spoke the way he always did when he wanted help without asking for it. "I just need you to take a look." The request hovered, gentle but weighted. "You're good at these things." My fingers hovered over the counter, already reaching for the familiar role. The fixer, the translator, the buffer between discomfort and resolution. "I can't help with that," came out steady. "You'll need to call the company directly." Silence stretched across the line. It wasn't anger. It was recalibration. "Oh," he offered finally. "All right." The call ended without protest, without guilt, without thanks. My hands shook after, not with fear, with release. Caleb watched from the doorway, backpack still on his shoulder. Was that okay? Yes. Settled between us. Because it was honest. He nodded, processing in real time. "You didn't fix it?" "I didn't." I agreed. That evening, my mother tried a different approach. A package arrived on the doorstep. Inside, a sweater she knew I liked and a card written in looping script. Just something small. No pressure. I folded the sweater carefully and placed it back in the box. The card followed. The package went to the donation bin by the door. Caleb noticed. "You're not keeping it." "No," I answered. Gifts with strings still pull. He absorbed that quietly, then surprised me. "The house feels calm now." The words landed gently and stayed. Dinner passed without interruption. No buzzing phone, no mental rehearsals, no bracing for impact. Caleb talked about school, about a project he was excited about a friend who made him laugh. His voice moved freely, not cautious, not measured. Later, while loading the dishwasher, the phone buzzed again. A missed call from my father. No voicemail this time. I didn't call back. Caleb dried a plate and handed it to me. "I like it when we're not rushing." Me too. Settled easily. That night, as the house quieted, I realized something fundamental had shifted. I wasn't teaching my son how to cut people off. I was teaching him how to stay present without disappearing, and for the first time, the boundary held. My mother arrived alone, earlier than expected, standing at the door with her hands folded like she was waiting to be told where she stood. No gift bag, no practiced smile. Just a quiet nod when I stepped aside. She chose the chair across from me, posture careful. "I've been thinking about what you said." Her voice carried softer than usual, less arranged, "about how long it's been since I asked how you were actually doing. I stayed where I was, waiting." She continued, slower now. "I assumed you were strong because you never asked for help. I told myself you preferred it that way." Her eyes dropped to the table. I didn't consider that maybe you stopped asking because it didn't change anything. The words didn't land like an apology, they landed like an admission. Caleb hovered at the edge of the room, unsure. My mother noticed him and didn't motion him closer. That restraint mattered. When your husband died, she went on, I didn't know what to do, so I focused on what looked normal, on what I could control. A pause followed, heavy but unforced. I see now that I chose comfort over showing up. I kept my voice even. Impact matters more than intention. She nodded, accepting the correction without defense. I want to try again. Slowly, if that's allowed, access to Caleb isn't assumed, came back measured. It's earned. No money, no obligations, no gifts. Her hands tightened together, then relaxed. I understand. Caleb stepped forward then, cautious but curious. Hi, Grandma. Her face softened without reaching. Hi, Caleb. She didn't open her arms. She waited. He gave a small wave and retreated, comforted by the lack of pressure. Before leaving, she stood by the door, hesitating. I don't expect forgiveness, she offered quietly. I just want the chance to do better. That chance comes with boundaries, I reminded her. She nodded once. I'll respect them. After she left, the house felt steadier, not lighter, not warm, just honest. Caleb joined me at the table, fingers tracing the wood. She listened. He observed. Yes, I agreed. Listening is different from fixing. He considered that, then smiled faintly. I like this version. I did too. The school auditorium buzzed with small, ordinary noise. Parents shuffled programs. Children whispered lines they already knew by heart. My parents arrived on time and chose seats in the middle row, no closer than anyone else. No one waved them forward. Caleb spotted me from the stage and smiled, quick and unguarded. After the curtain call, he scanned the room once, then walked over on his own terms. You did great, my father offered, voice steady, careful. Which part did you like best? Caleb thought for a moment. The ending. He paused. It felt calm. My mother nodded, accepting the answer without adding weight to it. I liked watching you, came softly. No claim, no correction. They didn't linger. They didn't turn the moment into proof of anything. They thanked him, wished us a good night, and left. On the drive home, Caleb stared out the window, relaxed in a way I hadn't seen in years. I don't feel tired anymore, he shared. Just quiet. That's what peace feels like at first, settled between us. Weeks passed. Conversations with my parents stayed contained. They asked before visiting. They accepted no without argument. Vanessa and I spoke more freely, not as roles, but as sisters learning how to stand without leaning. One morning, packing Caleb's lunch, I caught myself humming. No rehearsed responses played in my head. No knot waited in my stomach. I wasn't bracing. I didn't fix my family. I changed how I showed up in it. I stopped trading my silence for approval. I chose clarity over comfort and learned that love, when it's real, doesn't require disappearing. If this story feels familiar, stay with us. Share it with someone who's learning the same lesson. Sometimes the bravest thing you can do is stop performing and let the truth breathe. I didn't ruin a celebration. I ended a system that required me to be invisible.